Today we have with us a girl who dreamed about being a researcher, about a passionate woman who climbed the hills of Amani in search of that dream, and the woman who is living the dream, doing research and contributing to the control of a disease. She has worked on all her life. I'm honored to have on this show Dr. Mwele Malatela. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you very much, Fatima.
How does it feel being the first woman to hold the position of Director General of the National Institute of Medical Research in Tanzania? But you are also the first woman and African Vice President of the International Association of National Public Health Institute, the first woman chairperson of the Advisory Group for Neglected Tropical Diseases for the Africa region. You hold so many titles, I had to read it off.
Thank you very much, Fatma. I feel a sense of honor, but with it comes a sense of intense obligation. And I feel that it's very nice to have the titles, but with the titles comes a lot of hard work and a lot of obligation to, particularly to women who are climbing up the ladder, who think this is not possible. I feel I owe it to them to keep at this, so with this sense of honor comes a sense of humility and a sense of obligation, and you know, it's a strange feeling, mixture of these feelings. But I also feel that if today. Being the first woman Director General of NIMRI inspires a little girl somewhere to think that she tomorrow, you know, after a certain time in her life, she can be or will be in certain leadership positions, then I know that, you know, my course or my work in life in many ways has been achieved, is fulfilled.
Yeah. No, I can say I have not read that much about you, but from what I've read, you inspire me. It's, you know, I'm sure, I know that these titles don't just come from, you know, nowhere. You have to really work at them, and you have to really do a good job. So it's really an honor having you here. Can you talk about your life as a young researcher, growing to a prominent personality? How was this journey?
My journey was an interesting one. So I studied science at the University of Dar es Salaam. I studied science basically from secondary school. I did not like additional mathematics for some reason, but I had a very stern headmistress who insisted that I do additional mathematics. But I loved science. I loved the rest of the things. I loved biology. I loved chemistry. And I went on to do science at the University of Dar es Salaam. I did a degree in zoology. And then my focus was medical parasitology. So I wanted, so even during my, during the field terms that we'd get at the university, I was always interested in parasites. Right. And I felt, you know, that maybe this is the direction that I'd like to go. And initially, earlier on in my life, I had contemplated, you know, did I want to be a doctor? Did I want to be a researcher? And when I went to the University of Dar es Salaam, I felt more and more that the calling was to be a researcher, to find out what drives things. Right. And I've always been an inquisitive child, so I think that was right up my alley. So after my degree, I actually, so this is a very interesting story. Okay. And maybe one story that I've told very few people. Okay. So I went for in those days you had what was called a cell form, and that would tell you where you were stationed.
Okay.
And I was stationed to go and do fisheries research.
Okay.
So they said, you want to do research? So we'll have you do fisheries research.
Okay.
I walk into the room and the CEO of the then Fisheries Research Institute says, I thought this would be a man.
Oh my gosh.
And he says, no, you know, this won't do. I already told them I don't want women. And for a moment, I was shocked.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, how is this possible? How can, and this had, you know, being a woman, I mean, I know that there's always this feeling of, you know, women can't do this, but to have it blatantly stated to me was really a shock.
Yeah.
And then I decided, no, I didn't want to do fisheries. So that was he closed that door for me because I walked out and I never came back. But I think the thing is that he made me go back to where my heart was, and that was medical research. And so I went to NIMRI. I had a very long interview. My boss my former boss, the one who employed me, keeps talking about one of the longest interviews of his time. And as soon as I passed the interview, I was given a position to be a research scientist in Amani. But strangely enough, I was also given a particular disease to work on.
Okay.
And the disease was filariasis, lymphatic filariasis, which is always also called elephantiasis, which is a terribly disfiguring disease, which affects a lot of people and affected a lot of people in Tanzania.
Okay.
So when he said this, I said, well, you know, I'd like to go and work on malaria, because malaria was the in thing at the time. It was the most interesting disease. There was a lot of money in malaria. All the partners or donors were giving money to the malaria control and the malaria initiatives. Why would he want me to go and work on a disease that nobody is doing anything about? And he said, because I want you to go and do something about it.
Wow.
And those, for me, it's now that those words ring a bell. Then I just thought that this is so unfair. You know, I come here, I want to come and do research, and then I get thrown into a place where it's almost like a hopeless place. And so I started off going into the villages, seeing people with this disfiguring disease, and I learned to listen and talk to them about the disease. I learned to hear what their problems were. I would do my research as well, take blood samples, look at the parasites. The worst part of the time we were working was that we would always have to work at night because the parasites come to the blood at night.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it was one of those times where we worked between 10 and 2 o'clock in the morning. And then because that's the only time you can get the parasites. Now we have improved tests. People can know that you have the parasites in your blood at any time. But during that time, it was hard. It was hard to get people to come around. Now you have moving vans and everything. At that time, you know, we'd have like a video, set it up, and hope that people would come. But it was very rewarding. It was very rewarding. I learned from the people, from the patients. I also learned from people who are very low down in the scientific ladder, the lab assistants. They taught me all I needed to know about particular parasites. So it was a very enriching experience. So though I felt I'd been thrown into the middle of nowhere, because Amani is 72 kilometers from Tanga. It is way up in the mountains. So my description of it being way up in the mountains, it is way up in the mountains. And literally, I was there for several months. I was the only woman scientist, and people were not used to that. So it was a very tough time that people were only used to seeing women as maybe secretaries or assistants, and here comes a woman who is a scientist who's the same rank as their husbands. There was this feeling of very great feeling of insecurity also, which eventually died down, but it was a difficult, and for me, I was but this should be normal.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It wasn't, and I realized that, you know, that was door opening for so many people.
Right.
Even the people that I met there, they were saying, you know, we were, you know, we had seen a few women scientists, but we hadn't interacted with them.
Yeah.
And we were not sure what to expect.
Right.
And so that built up, and I eventually went to London to do my master's, my PhD. I came back, and I got a position as head of department here at the headquarters in Dar es Salaam. And then finally I became director for research, also at NIMRI, and it was a very good experience, because I already had probably one of the greatest experiences. And at the same time, when I came back to Dar, I also initiated the lymphatic filariasis control program. So that worldwide, during the time when I came back, there was a worldwide program to now eliminate lymphatic filariasis. And the WHO gave out the resolution in 1997. And Tanzania, so I was one of the first people who got the program together and launched the program on Mafia Island on the 1st of October 2000. So this year the program is 15 years old, and we have made tremendous progress. So there are places which are actually free of the disease. And it gives me chills down my spine to actually imagine that during my lifetime, I've gone from a situation where people had no hope at all, where people were saying there's no cure for this disease. So during the time I was doing my research earlier on, there was no cure. There was there was one drug which could be put in salt, but it couldn't work in the Tanga areas because there was another disease called river blindness, which would affect people and they'd start itching. So you couldn't use the drug there. So basically you just told them that, you know, there's very, very little we can do. And later on, you come back to them telling them, you know what, now there are drugs. You can get rid of your parasites and you can live a better life, and your children don't have to have this disease. And we pray that your grandchildren, inshallah, will not see this disease. And I think that, for me, has been one of the greatest experiences of my life, to have seen this evolution from people saying, this disease is not a problem in Tanzania, from people saying it's from drinking coconut water, to people eventually actually saying, you know, we're getting rid of this disease. So in places like Newala, in Tandahimba, in Kuranga, the disease is actually completely disappearing. So we have patients, but the disease in the mosquito is not there. So that's a huge achievement, and there are many districts like that in Tanzania who are now seeing either a decline in the disease or a complete disappearance of the disease.
I think it's amazing because despite all the challenges, you know, you remain strong and you continued with what you were passionate about. And now today you were able to, you know, make such a change to so many people's lives. And I think that's something that, you know, we need, as women, we need to take away. That, you know, you will get criticized, you know, people will put you down, but you have to remain strong, and you have to remain, you know, strong to the cause that you're trying to, you know, fight.
And I think for a lot of women, what happens is that they tend to work 5 or 10 times harder than men.
Of course.
To get the same, just to get the same recognition. And so it comes to us naturally to overachieve, it comes naturally because you're put down so much that you begin to say, you know, if I need to stay up all night to get this paper right or whatever, then I will do it. And I think that in itself builds your character. But at the same time, you know, I'm hoping that other women are not going to have to go through the same kind of you know, kind of slight oppression that other women. So you know, I'm thankful to our mothers, the people that came before us, because they put their foot in the doors. We have slightly opened the doors. I'm hoping our daughters can really just walk through the doors. And without having to make excuses for who they are, without having to you know, to scream and say, look at me, and you know, just to be able to be there and take a seat at the table. I think that's, for me, that will have made, you know, a tremendous difference.
Right.
Yeah. So.
You know, you seem to be committed to so many tasks nationally and internationally. You know, how do you manage all this?
So, and I haven't told you the other things that I do.
Oh,
so,
okay. Wow.
so those ones will leave for another day.
Okay.
But for these ones, so first of all, I love research. So I've always had an inquiring mind.
Okay.
My late mother used to give stories about an incessantly questioning 3-year-old who questioned everything.
Yeah.
And would question every single thing that came her way, and embarrassed her one day by even questioning something that was from the Bible. Oh. So she's very, so I've always been a questioning person. I've never taken things at face value. I've always asked, always wanted to know why is this, what. So research came naturally to me. But I think I also love to serve people.
Right.
So that combination came, the lymphatic filariasis control program came at the right time for me to be able, you know, it came as soon as I came back from the UK, when I was thinking, oh, you know what, I want to get a grant, build a state-of-the-art lab, and do this and do more research. But at the same time, there was a real strong calling of me for service. Right. And I think this combination really it makes me enjoy what I do. Yeah. And if somebody, once you enjoy what you do, this becomes very easy.
It's no more a job.
It's no more a job. Yeah. It just comes to me. And I think this is what makes it, and a lot of people ask me, they say, but how, you know, recently we had a meeting of this African neglected tropical disease group, of which I'm the chair. And they said, you know, you go through it so smoothly, and there's some really tough issues. And I say, it's because I really enjoy what I do. And I think that is what compels me. That's what makes me wake up in the morning thinking, you know, this, and the feeling that in a slight way, no matter how small, that I'm making a difference in my little corner, wherever I am. I think that for me is really fulfilling. But the balance is difficult. Right. The balance is difficult, and you know, managing, going to being in one capital here, being tomorrow back in the village. But I like it because, you know, I come from from maybe Atlanta, and then in the next day I'm in Mkuranga. It grounds me. Right. So I have this, you know, that I can be, you know, up in the air one day and sitting at a meeting discussing the same things at a different level, at a global level, and then I can come back to the village and sit down with people and see what the real issues are. Right. So in a way, I've been blessed. I'm lucky in that way, that I have both the international side, and I have the real, you know, down-to-earth local side, which in many ways, for me, is my teacher. Yeah. And I think that is the part that teaches me the most, and grounds me, and continues to make me, give me humility. Because otherwise you can get lost in this. It's very easy to. Yeah. It's very easy to get lost in these titles. Yeah. So I think the grounding does help.
And you know, when I was in university, I remember very little of what I studied because it was mostly numbers. I did finance, so yeah. But I also did management, and I took a lot of leadership classes. And there was one professor, and he said, don't do anything unless you're making a difference. because he said you will never get anywhere in life. Unless you're making a difference in somebody else's life, that is what is going to drive you, and that is what is going to make you more and more successful. And I have noticed that because, you know, when I came back, I was so engrossed in my work, that I didn't really bother doing anything else. And, you know, I would get exhausted, and, you know, I would say, where am I going with this, and what am I doing, you know? You just, you know, when you go to sleep, you don't feel a sense of fulfillment. But then I said, you know, no, I have to give back to, you know, my community. I have to give back to my people and to Tanzania. And so slowly, I started doing other activities. And I've noticed that, you know, I feel so much better mentally, you know, physically. I feel when I wake up rejuvenated, and I feel like I want to really do something today, you know?
It does center you in many ways.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. It's a really, it's a difficult, you know, it's a difficult place to get to. You don't get to it directly, but when you do get there, you do understand the sense of fulfillment that comes from service. And you know, yes, there are many, you know, have many obligations, and there are lots of things. But at the end of the day, if you can wake up in the morning and say today, or sleep at night and say today, I made a difference. And I always like to give a story of one of two stories. One is a carpenter in Mkuranga who had elephantiasis, and who had very, he was completely, he found it very difficult to work as a carpenter. And with the program and with the support of the program, he got medication, but was also told how to take care of his legs so that they don't get more infected, more infection. And in fact, his legs have really reduced considerably, and he went back to his carpentry job. So one day I'm at Nimri, and so I see him downstairs, and I say, you know, what are you doing here? Do you have a problem? Are you sick? Because they normally, you know, a lot of them have my numbers. And I said, so are you sick? Is there something wrong? And he said, no, I've come to sell doors.
Wow.
And you know, he didn't understand, but tears were coming down my face. Why? Because this was a person who people had given up on. You know, the community had given up on him because he was, you know, he was disfigured. He didn't have a lot to offer. He was almost destitute to the point of almost begging. And here he is today. He's selling doors. And that for me, you know, I even wrote it down, you know, today was a great day. And the reason it was a great day was just this experience with this, with this person who really, and every time I start getting tired or start feeling, you know, with all these things, there's global politics, there's regional politics. When I start feeling confused with all that, I just open my laptop and go to this story, because I wrote the story the minute he left. And it's just such an inspiration. And there's so many more of those. You know, a little boy who couldn't play football. And he said, all I want to do is play football. But my legs, these big legs. And now he can wear shoes, now he can play football. And to him, life is completely different from where it was. And there are lots and lots and lots of people like this who were voiceless, basically. And in many ways, you know, elephantiasis was like the leprosy of our century. Because people were really, really, you know, in the early days when I went to some of the villages, I would ask, you know, do you have people with elephantiasis here? And they would say, oh, let's go out and call them. And they would come, and there would be maybe 50, 60 people. But they would be all hidden in the houses. And so it was a sad situation. So for moving to that, to a place where I can say some children born in Tandahimba, born in Newala, born in Mkuranga, in the next years will not have this disease, will not have to fear this parasite. It makes me feel extremely proud, and extremely fulfilled, like I said.
So speaking of you traveling so much and you know, you work a lot. I know you get this a lot, but how do you balance your home life and your work life?
So balancing is tough. So balancing is something that I've had to learn the hard way, because like I told you, initially it was like, I'm going to work 10 times, I'm going to work 15 times more if that's what it takes to get, you know, to get where I need to get. But I think the key is to you know, the key is to also be able to say, this is what I can't do. And this is I need to delegate. So I learned to delegate more. I learned to say no, which was very difficult for me. I was saying yes to almost everything. I learned to say no. I learned to carve out space for family time, which is still a problem. I'm still, even with that, I still get complaints about, you're not spending enough time, and I'm glad that I do have family support. So that is, but it was, you know, the extent of travel that I had to do, and with a young daughter, it was very, very hard. And I have to tell, you know, this is what a lot of women go through, that, you know, they're traveling, their children are at home, you're not there to do their homework. Skype has helped tremendously, and FaceTime, but it's not the same. And so that guilt is, you know, I'm hoping that it will, one day, people will not have to carry that guilt around. So yeah, the balance is tough, but it is possible. And I think if you have a supportive partner, if you have a supportive family, and, you know, one of the things that I've always told my daughter is I've been honest with her about what I do, how important my work is, but how important she is. And that, you know, that I would like her, you know, one day to also be able to assume responsibilities and not feel guilty. And so after having these talks with her and getting her to understand as well, because as the older they grow, the tougher it becomes to travel. Because, oh, Mom, you're not here for this, you're not here for sports day, you're not here for, it becomes, it really is hard. And it takes a lot out of you. If you are really to ask any woman, to be honest, it is tough. But I think if you're able to truly tell yourself that this is what I can do, this is what I can't do, and also be able to reduce, you know, to take away the guilt by having discussions with the family and partners and saying, you know, by your partner, your children, and saying, look, I need to do this. Because at the same time, you can stay at home and be miserable, make everybody around you miserable. So though the balance is tough, it's a possibility, and I balance myself by just being honest about what it is I can do, what I can't do, but also I'm quite religious, so at the same time that also helps center me as well, and allows me to concentrate on my spiritual self as well. But, you know, again, you know, just being honest to people at work also, that today I can't. I'm worn out. And I think a lot of people fear that, and in a place of, or in a company, you know, in an institution which is predominantly male, they find it very, particularly in the executive group, when I say, you know, no, I'm not feeling well, I'm going home now. And they're in shock. No, but, you know, I said, no. And, you know, like even taking leave, things like taking leave to men are very, you know, they're saying, we don't, do you, why are you, and I insist. I say, you have to take your leave days. Otherwise you break down. You need to. So they're actually also learning from me a number of things on balance. And they're saying, we're really thankful to you because, you know, the leave days made such a difference to me. The time I spent with my family is, you know, you forced us, but it was good for us. So all these things, I think, in a way, you know, I don't have like one answer of how is it. It's balance is hard.
Yeah,
That's my answer.
But I think God has really made women strong. Absolutely. And has given them the you know, this ability to do so many things and
multitask.
Yeah. And you know, I think that also you know, you said you have a daughter and that, you know, it's difficult, but I think that at the same time, if you were sitting at home and you were miserable, your daughter would take from that. Exactly. Right? But you're working and you are talking to her and you are making a difference in the world, she's also taking from that. Exactly. So I think that, you know, it's a beautiful thing that you're able to, you know, the role of a mother is not only to basically teach and say, do this, is to lead by example. Exactly. So if you are making such a difference and she's watching you, I think that is also, it's going to impact her life in so many ways, you know.
I think so. And I'm very proud of the way she handles this. Right. And, you know, right from when she was a little kid, I would, so where in the world is mom? We played this game. Okay. And I would send her postcards from where I was. I would tell her about these places.
Yeah.
And for her, it really, I'm hoping that it's helped build her character. Right. But she also understands suffering. She also understands the importance of humility. Right. And I'm hoping that those things, because those are the values that we're losing as a society. Yeah. And I think, you know, as a parent and as a mother, those are also things that I'd like to instill, not only in my children, but in, you know, in the children of my relatives and in society as a whole. Right.
Yeah. So you've already spoken about a few challenges that you face working. You know, is there any story in particular you'd like to tell us about, you know, as a woman working, you know, that you've faced a slight issue or a problem, and how you went about, you know, overcoming it?
So there are many stories, but I know we could be here all night. But one interesting one is just the dynamic. Okay. It's really about the male and female dynamic and the view people have. So we were having an interview, and I was to chair that interview at the Institute. At the time, I was director for research, and I had been asked by the then Director General to chair the panel. So I arrived at 9:15, and I was going into my office, and one of the interviewees who was, we were interviewing quite senior people. Okay. So he says, Binti, and I say, yes, you know, good morning, shikamo, yeah, welcome. Say, yeah, do you know what time the interview starts? And I said, I think it'll be 9:15. Please let us know when, you know, please let us know in good time. And I said, oh, no problem. And he said, would it be possible to get a cup of tea?
Oh my gosh.
So I said, sure. He said, no, make it coffee. And I said, okay, no problem. And how do you like your coffee? So he said, 2 coffees with milk, and I made him coffee, and I took the coffee to him. And I asked if there's would there be anything else? The other person sitting next to him was a little bit apprehensive, because he figured he had seen me, and so he was asking his neighbor, do you want her to go make you some coffee as well? And he said, no, thanks, I'm fine. So I went into my office, I sat down, and when I think he started panicking when somebody said, oh, let me go and call the chair of the interview. So I walked right past him into the interviewing room. And I sat, and the minute he walked in, I was the chair of the interview panel. So he was in total shock. He needed like a couple of minutes to compose himself. And he didn't do well. And the reason he didn't do well was because he just completely lost it. But what's the moral of the story is just these complete assumptions that any woman who walks into an office, and particularly who's young, is a secretary. And that, I think, is something, we're getting away from that, but I think, you know, it's things like that. Or, you know, you're sitting in interview panels with an all-male interview panel. You're the only woman. They completely forget that you're in the room, and they start saying, oh, no, we don't need any more women. You know, they'll start asking for maternity leave. They'll start asking for this. And that, you know, that is, you know, you're listening and you say, hello, you know, do you realize that there's, and oh, you know, I'm sorry, we completely forget that you're a woman. And it's things like that. They're very, you know, they sound minor, but they are the building blocks of what happens later. Because today, tomorrow, you say you don't want to interview for women. Because, you know, women are going to get pregnant and they're going to ask for maternity leave. You see, it's a cycle.
Vicious cycle.
It is a vicious cycle. And unless there's a woman at the table, and so this whole thing of sit at the table, getting your seat at the table is critical. And I think women should not shy away from that. And I think we will be doing other women a great disservice by saying, oh, we need to step back and yes, balance is important. Yes, our family lives are important. But really, to whom much is given, much is also desired, you know.
But I think that at the same time, when we're empowering our girls, we have to empower the men and educate them. Because I know how difficult it can be for a woman who doesn't get, you know, I mean, I've been blessed because I have had a family that's been so supportive, my father, and then my husband who's been even more supportive, you know, in every aspect. And, you know, I can't imagine what it feels like to not be empowered or to, you know, have these difficulties of, you know, maybe, you know, your spouse is not okay with you working or your spouse is giving you issues, you know. But I think that as, you know, as a community, we have to also empower the boys, and we have to really teach them that, you know, you are at par with girls. So,
absolutely,
you know.
Absolutely, and that's the most important thing that I think that, you know, by putting boys aside and saying this is a women issue and a women debate, we're not going to get anywhere. We need together to have this discussion together. We need the boys and the girls to understand this. We need the parents to understand this. Like you, I mean, I have a very, very supportive father, and my late mother was also very supportive, but I shudder to think, you know, even with a very supportive mother, what it would be like if my father was not as supportive. And, you know, my father was one of those people where, you know, you can be anything. And then there are no limits. And there's, you know, and from him I learned that, you know, I didn't even think twice about being a woman. And it's only, you know, when you start getting into life, you start realizing, oh, that there are these limitations about being a woman. So the parental role, you know, the role of our parents and the role of us as parents is very important. And what we instill in our children, what we instill in both our boys and our girls is very, very important and makes all the difference. And you can actually see, and if you follow up, a lot of girls who are actually, you know, who have done well, and I'm not saying it's a general statement, but you find that most of them actually have had strong parents and strong fathers most of the time that have said, you know, you don't worry, you're a girl, but so what? You know, move on.
And they are not easy parents,
no,
for sure.
No, not at all.
Yeah,
not at all. They're tough.
Actually, you know, and I believe that, you know, they are the ones that are going to really push you to your limits to the point that you actually achieve something, because when you're a child, you don't know what's good for you. You don't know, if you do this, tomorrow it's going to benefit you, or if you do Y, tomorrow it's going to, come in the way. But as a parent, I think that, they are the ones that have to make that decision and be like, you know what, I have to push my child. I have to push my child to, do this and to try that, so that tomorrow they can become successful.
Because I mean, when I was going to Amani,
Yeah.
and I'd lived, a life of my father had been a minister, politician for a long time, and everybody was saying, but why are you going to Amani? Yeah. Why can't your dad get you a transfer so that you can be here in Dar? Yeah. And so I was, I tried my dad. I actually said, Dad, do you think? And he said, oh, so who lives in Amani? And I was like, yeah, there's scientists there. Okay, so if there's scientists there and you're going to work as a scientist, what is the problem? Right. Oh, it's far away. Far away from what? And so, he was the one who said, okay, so you make do with your circumstances. You will go to Amani, and you will, you will make it. This cannot be about men against women, boys against girls. It has to be a joint effort, so that boys understand and women also understand. So it can't be, and I think parenting has a lot to do with it. Yeah. And like you attribute a lot of who you are today to having a strong father, having a strong partner. Yeah. So it just shows how important the male roles are for the success of the woman. Yeah. And I really think that the more we talk about this in that context as well, as parents, bringing up girls, it's extremely important. And I think that is something that we need to continue to do. We can't have, it's important for women's voices to be heard. And I don't think, there should be apologies that, we need to make a noise, but at the same time, we have to be constructive and work with men, work with our partners and our husbands, work with our boy children to bring them up in the way that we'd want, the world to be. And like I was saying, when I talk to my executives, the directors, they want the best for their girls. Right. They take them to the best schools, the best universities, and wanting, the very top positions for their girls. And and they said, I'd love to see my daughter as Director General one day. And I say, well, yes, but that seed has to be planted from now. Right. Because you can't be talking about your daughter as Director General when you don't want your wife to work or do a course or do that. So it's a whole spectrum. Right. But I think that we need to have the discussion. Right. And it's not a discussion that can be forced upon. It's one that it's continued negotiation. Right. And continued experiences, so that people, when I told them that, what about your daughters? Yeah. It was a very different feeling.
Right, of course.
Very, very different. And you could see that they had a totally different perspective of where they had placed their daughters on that spectrum. Yeah. And so this discussion is really important to have men involved.
And I think it's such a good way to approach it, because today if you try to fight it, I think that you will not get anywhere. That I think that nothing comes from fighting or arguing about these things. I think that it's so nicely said. That what would you want for your daughters? And then again, they're in a different. Completely, they're put in the shoes. And they're like, oh wow, no, I would want the best for my daughter. Absolutely. So I think that's a very good way to handle things. So speaking of, how do you think we as women, can empower the girls?
I think it's really important to be able to talk to our girl children, to be able to tell them, to be able to tell them what they can be. Right. I think the voices I heard about not my mother saying the sky is not the limit, my dad saying you can be anyone you want to be. I think those voices for me were very strong, and they came at an early age. So I think, you know, we need to be telling that to our daughters. And we need to be opening, you know, saying that the opportunities are there if you work hard. And I think that's the key. For me, as a promoter of women in science, I'm also saying, you know, the girl child, we should encourage the girl children in sciences, because in secondary schools, they tend to drop off, and it's more from peer pressure than than anything else. So it's like, oh, girls are not supposed to do mathematics. That's a boys' thing. And girls are not supposed to do well in maths. But eventually girls do well in maths. Girls excel in science. Girls make fantastic scientists. But, you know, it's because they've had help, you know, throughout. They've had help throughout the way, in the sense that there are people who have pushed them, inspired them. Some, of course, of their own volition, but others have been, you know, it's with help and direction. If I, for example, had not, you know, if somebody had succumbed to me saying I hate math, and that's it, maybe, you know, maybe I would have taken science, but maybe I would not have been as rigorous as I probably am today. So I'm just saying that we have a really important role, and we have a mentorship role, because it's not what children, like you were saying earlier, it's not what you tell them, it's also what they see. So they have to be able to see strong women. They have to be able to see women in positions of power. They have to be able to see women doing day-to-day jobs. They have to be able to embrace that, and to know that that's possible. Because you can't tell them, oh, you can be anyone you want to be, and then all they see around them is women who can't be anything, basically. So the truth is that we also are obligated as women who have had education, who've had opportunities, to walk our talk so that our girl children will be able to get an experience. I had a young high school student, a daughter of a friend, who shadowed me for a day. And she says that was one of the best experiences of her 6-week field work. And it was just one day, and she was sitting, watching me, you know, interact with people. I had her at meetings, taking minutes. And so at the end of the day, I asked her, what did you learn from all this? And she said, you know, I got inspired. I got moved by this, and knowing that there was a possibility for me. And for me, that was just the answer that I felt, you know, that made me feel that it was worth having her shadow me for the day. And so we need to be mentors to our girl children. We really need to open up. And I think what you're doing through programs like this is really, really great. And I want to commend you for it, because it does touch the girl child. It does open them up to opportunities. And once they are open to opportunities, anything can happen.
You're very right. I think it is our responsibility to, you know, to give back and to inspire. And I'm so lucky that, you know, you were able to come here and to share your story. And you are, you know, you are a Tanzanian woman, a successful Tanzanian woman. And, you know, just me sitting with you these 40 minutes, I've learned so much, you know, and I can take away so much. And, you know, I'm sure you've inspired so many other women, and you're going to inspire so many women. And I'm so grateful that I had this opportunity to interview you. Thank you so much, Dr. Madachela, for coming.
Thank you very much, Fatima.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.